Good evening and welcome to the school committee meeting of Wednesday, August 24th. This meeting is being recorded and I think it is being also broadcast. Broadcasting this one on WHCA as well. As we start all meetings, if you could please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. You want us to jump right in, or you want to jump in? Do you want to tee these up, or you want us to do it?
So, do you want to do any public comment?
So I don't think we have anything scheduled. Certainly, we can let some folks chime in if they have something as we go. But
okay. So I think we'll start. And again, last week I apologize, but I appreciate the committee moving the working group information sessions to this evening. We're going to go a little out of order. We have the post-grad readiness and early college and work initiative queued up, so they'll go first. Uniform start times will go next. I'll go next. Then we'll go to robust K-8 related arts, and if you want to use the board, we can do that. And student climate and culture and support will go last. So, Group C, post-grad.
Group C. So yeah, I'm going to do the intro, and Ruth's going to join us for sure. So, we're going to try and spend no more than 10 minutes just to tee it up for the public that hasn't been paying attention to some of these. We took some time over the course of the summer, all these groups, looking at some various things. And tonight is really just an information share. So it's not meant to be a decisioning type activity. It's really just to share kind of what we did as we spent some time together over the summer. So our group, which was myself, Beth, Fred, and Ruth, really spent some time looking at post-graduation working group initiatives, as we called it. And we really focused in on early college pathways, additional post-graduation type opportunities in terms of career readiness, and then we looked at early college as well. And so the one thing that our group said I had to absolutely mention was Ruth was absolutely fantastic in really helping us understand a lot of what was already done within the district. So that's something that you're going to hear a little bit of tonight, because as school committee members, sometimes we didn't understand that. And then we're also going to share some things that us as school committee members and community members could probably also do, because that was another ask of Ruth's. So to kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's going to share a little bit of what we did and how we did it.
All right, so we had several meetings, and we were talking about the different pathways. For instance, the new one, the innovation pathways, and I know Ruth will talk a little bit more about that. What we did was also contacted, some of us contacted different school districts and spoke to them, see what they were doing. And also looking up information about the state, what the state had to offer, and like what Ruth will explain what we were already doing. So I want to thank also Hillary, because Pembroke is just starting Innovation Pathways this year, and they are starting with a business pathway. We are hoping, as Ruth will talk to us, that hopefully we're going to do a medical one. Because we feel that it's not just about college, it's about readiness for all different aspects of the world. And so that's what we were looking into. We also talked about dual enrollment with Quincy College and the extra credit that people get with that. Some of the places that we contacted as far as what they do for post-grad, like Middleborough and Carver offer all kinds of things like biotech, environmental, health and wellness, all different ones. Some do just dual enrollment information. A couple of them are doing the innovation pathways that we are working on, and Ruth will talk more about the innovation pathways and what that means. We found that some aren't doing that much. So we're happy that we have done, and you will hear a lot in the past, and we're going to be doing a lot in the future too. So,
It's all yours.
Okay. So one of the things that we talked about is,
Can you go to the next slide?
what were some of the things that we had that maybe we have gone away in the past few years? So one of the things that I was really proud when I came into Whitman-Hanson in 2004 is that we had a very robust internship program. I don't know if any of you remember Georgia Clancy, but she ran it. That was pretty much her primary role. And it was amazing. In fact, she got awards from the Department of Ed for all of the work that she did. But at that point, it was, it was her. It was a dedicated person to that innovation pathway, and to that internship program. And we had about 100 students each year that did it, all seniors. And then when she retired, that position was not necessarily eliminated, but it was added on to somebody else. And it definitely did not go, quite as smoothly. We didn't have as many students doing it. And then went to a business department person. And then a few years ago, when we were going to lose a position, the only way we saved it was for the school counseling department to bring on a small internship program. And then COVID hit, and that was kind of the end of that, because we couldn't certainly have kids going out, they couldn't be placed. But one of the things that we were really hoping to do is to bring back the internship program for next year. And if we do go with Innovation Pathways, that will be an important part of that. So that's really a goal, to bring that back, and to bring it back in a good way, a big way, that we can have lots of students doing it. We also, when Dr. Jones reconfigured the schedule, a lot of the planning in that was to allocate periods that met enough at the end of the day so our students would be able to do that, within a rotating schedule. So what do we already do? We have a comprehensive school counseling program. Our counselors are in classrooms about 80, 90 times a year. We're doing all different types of lessons with kids. We're going in and we're doing interest inventories in a couple of the grades. We do a career interest profiler. We do a Myers-Briggs type indicator. We're in classrooms a lot. And one of the goals of our department is that every student leaves with a plan. And it doesn't have to be a four-year college. We want them to have a plan, that they have a marketable skill, that when they can get out of school, they will have either heading off to training and education, or have a skill to actually have a marketable skill that they can earn a living wage. So part of all of that curriculum that we do, it's through Panther Pathways, which is basically students are compiling an electronic portfolio of all the work that they've done, and we're going to be continuing to work with that in Innovation Pathways. We also do a lot of career immersion activities like Career Connections Fair, college and post-secondary options fair, various field trips. We did a career construction day last year. We usually take them to the Boston National College Fair. Our juniors, we bring as many juniors, about 160. Hopefully that'll be back in place after COVID. Bringing them to things like the Southeastern Technical Institute, Mass Higher Career Day, because we know that there's more than just four-year colleges for kids, and we want them to develop a plan that's right for them based on their career, their interests, their talents. They find out that through the interest inventories. And also all of our lessons, for the most part, include looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so that we're asking kids right away to look in and see where the jobs of the future are going to be, what type of pay they can get, and what type of training is needed. So we're really teaching them how to go and use that tool. But again, the goal is for every student to have a plan for life after high school, apprenticeship, career college, military, 2 or 4 year. What we're doing right now, we started working on it last year, is meeting with some of the DESE folks, and we are in the process of applying for Innovation Pathways from the Department of Education. We are going to be probably doing 2 pathways. One we know will be a medical healthcare pathway, and we're still thinking about the best fit for the other pathway. What a pathway needs to have is high quality advising, which we actually already have through the work we do with our curriculum. We're working with the department, the Mass Hire Board in Brockton. We have to make sure that we're looking at careers that are in need in our area. It has to include work-based learning, so internship programs, post-secondary linkages, which we have a lot of those already, and also integrated instruction. So we're really excited about that. The application is due in October for the first part. And if we're approved to go forward, there's another Part B due in February, and then we'd get designation in the fall of 2023. Whitman-Hanson currently does have a dual enrollment partnership. That was one of my goals many years ago. I think, Jeff, you were principal when I brought that in. And for the past 10 years, we've had about 385 students get dual enrollment credit from Quincy College. We are hoping, and right now the classes that we offer are pre-calculus, sociology, and accounting. And we are working with them and just waiting to hear back about some of the new classes we want to offer. Marketing was just approved, and I'm waiting to hear back on anatomy and physiology and statistics. And that anatomy and physiology would be kind of a key component for college credit opportunities in our medical pathway for Innovation Pathways. So that's a little bit what we've been doing. I think I turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, I think so as a group, we all kind of wanted to pause here and maybe just spend no more than a minute each kind of sharing some thoughts. I don't know if you have anything
No,
additional,
Fred,
Beth?
it's Fred's turn.
Fred, go ahead.
No, I guess it's my turn. And you stole my thunder. It would not have been possible without you, so thank you so much. I think the most important thing that I learned, through these exercises is that we're aiming our students at not only college, but a career path, or to have a skill set and to have an idea of what life after high school is going to be. It's not the same for everybody. Everyone has a different need, everyone has a different desire. And to be able to accommodate so many students in that aspect, is fantastic. I am a little bit afraid of some of the grants that are available, because like most grants, they come and then they dwindle and end, in the sustainability. Let's face it, when the kids show up in the next week or so to kindergarten for the next 18 years, or 12 years, geez, they'll be 18. For the next 12 years, it's all aimed at this, at what they're going to do after high school. And to me, there's nothing more important. And to recognize that while college is a very important thing, there are some children, you don't want them to slip through cracks, and you want to give every child the opportunity at success for life. And that's what I think we're on the pathway to, no pun intended, of being able to provide.
And one thing that we discussed also, with all this that we're hoping to eventually do, we're going to need somebody to be in charge, whether it be half-time or full-time, but somebody needs to do, like what was done before, to run any of these programs properly. And so that's something that we need to look into also. That's very important. It's wonderful to have, 150 kids out there in a job, but somebody has to supervise. So, we have to really understand that you just can't pile it on to a teacher to do after school, that there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah, and the only piece that I wanted to add, because when we initially did this, I was really interested in the early college piece, was I found a lot of value in the conversations we had, and by the time we were done, to me, the innovation pathways absolutely made sense as where we should prioritize and go first. I think when we look at early college, not only to the point with Fred that there's grants, and there's grants with innovation pathways as well, the early college just, it has a fit, but I'm not sure it necessarily fits at Whitman-Hanson right now. There really aren't a lot. It's really focused on more of the gateway cities and some of the efforts that goes with it. So I'm not saying it's not something we shouldn't do, but in terms of prioritization, I can see a more immediate natural fit for Whitman-Hanson, certainly going down the innovation pathways side of things. So that was good. And then you absolutely can't reiterate the point enough, because we did talk to several districts, and both on the early college and the innovation pathway side, it was very clear, if you want this to be a well-run program, to her point, like there has to be someone that's going to manage it well, because there are just so many pieces, and to have that good experience for the kids and to make sure that it works, you need someone to coordinate it. So that was really important there. And then our last piece was really just getting back to, how can the school committee and how can the community help? So
there are a few things that we'd love you to help with. I guess support our efforts to rebuild that robust internship program. And again, if we become Innovation Pathways designated, we've got to do it. And we all believe it anyway, because we've lived it and we've seen it. We know how great it is for kids. So, consider maybe finding funds for a position for that. We'd invite you to attend our Career Connections Fair. I should just plan the date for that. It's December 7th. And that's a day when we fill this library, we fill the hallways with career professionals, and our kids come down and talk to them. And you're all invited to participate if you like. It's really a wonderful day, and it's a really valuable thing for our kids to be able to talk to people out in the field and doing the work that they might be interested in. I had a parent in my office today, and I made her promise I would give her son a schedule change if she would come to the career fair. And she said yes. So I'm not, I'll beg if I need to. We also have our annual Credit for Life Fair. That is October 12th. That's the day we do PSATs for the 10th and 11th graders, and on October 12th, we run the Credit for Life Fair for the seniors. And that's where we need lots of booth volunteers to help our kids understand what this real life budgeting thing is throughout their lifetime. So if you're interested in that, we'll be putting it in the Panther Press and encouraging folks in our community to help sign up for that. And then, anything you can do to assist us in providing career exploration and career development things, like, when we're developing internship sites. If you are at a company that is open to that, let us know, work with us, maybe things like job shadow opportunities, career mentoring. And basically, as we move forward with this innovation pathways, if you have connections to the industries we're pursuing to help us build those partnerships, we would really appreciate it.
And that was basically the gist of it. So, last shameless plug for folks. I see some folks, certainly committee members, you all have a broad depth of diverse career experiences. So please try and attend those. But certainly I see some folks in the audience that I know come from different professional backgrounds. If you can participate in those, this is a great way to kind of bridge the gaps for some of our students and get them introduced to different career pathways. So we'd welcome having you. So other than that, we'll take quick questions if there are any. Otherwise, we're going to move right to the next one. Steve, yeah.
I'll make it quick, and thank you very much. I heard the word extra credit, and I heard the word credit, and also I'm kind of really thinking the whole, where you can get college credits before you even leave high school. So I'm sure there's different types of credits. What's some of the breakout of that? Like,
So the two main programs, or the big one is a dual enrollment program from the state of Massachusetts, which allows our kids to go to places like Massasoit and Bridgewater after, I think it's 4 o'clock or later, and take classes there for a very reduced cost of, I think it's about $150. And they can then, they would work with us, we would approve it, and then when they finish the class, they bring us back the transcript, and we actually add college credit, or add credit to our high school transcript as well, so it's dual enrollment. And then what we started doing with Quincy College about 10 years ago is our teachers actually teach the class. So Quincy College approves the teacher. They look at our curriculum, make sure that the curriculum lines up. So common teacher, again, a teacher that's approved, has to have a master's degree. The course syllabus has been vetted and it meets their standards. And then in the past, we've always had to have a very similar book. I think with electronic resources, that's a little bit less. But students that sign up for that, they could be sitting next, like if we're both in pre-calculus and Fred signs up for it and I do, we take the same class, we do the same work. Fred follows the registration form and signs up with Quincy College, and there is a fee, it's $300. But at the end of the year, I know from Quincy College, the students that signed up, I then give those grades to them, and those students earn 3 college credits from Quincy College for $300, which is a very, very good price. So we're looking, and what's nice about that is that it's very convenient for our kids because they're not doing extra, they're actually doing what they would be doing here in class. And again, it's over the 10 years, it's been 385 kids. So we're hoping to expand that opportunity. And again, you don't have to do it, but it's there if you would like to.
sure.
Actually, follow up on slide number 6 about what the application for the innovation pathways, medical health care pathway. It says, would we be adding classes for that next fall? Because it says the students participate in a sequence of courses, including a minimum of 2 technical classes and 2 advanced.
Right. So we're in the process of putting that all together, but we do a lot of this work anyway. So it's just a matter of really identifying it. My guess is that with the medical one, every student in the program would take anatomy and physiology. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. That's where we're trying to do the partnership on that class to have college credit. It could be AP Bio. We might decide that they really need a medical terminology course, and maybe we set it up to do that through Edgenuity. So we're just, we're throwing along lots of ideas now, but we feel really confident that we have a lot of those pieces in place already.
And then the other one that's not identified, is that
We're
still going to be applied for at the same time?
We're trying to decide what we think is the best one. We could do a business and marketing one, but we also really like the idea of something in biotech. So we also need to be able to sign up industry partners to work with us, and they have to be part of this whole application as well. So that's, we need to have all those pieces in place before we make that decision. Chris and I met last year with a representative from South Shore Health, and they were very interested in partnering with us. So that's our hope, is that we'll be able to get them to sign on.
And just point of clarification, Ingenuity is our online platform that we've used for online credit recovery, but we can do full classes as well. So,
Thank you.
Good. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. I know we're going to try and run through these, so certainly if folks have questions after the fact, we can always address them subsequently. So, where do you want to go next?
I'm gonna do mine, school start time,
Okay.
kids, if you can. So I updated that since it went into your drive, cleaned it up a little bit. So uniquely, so when we met in June, the committee decided on 3 different topics to discuss as small groups. And school start times was, or alignment of school start times was an offshoot. So I kind of took that upon myself as the superintendent, as potentially a subgroup this summer. And then if needed, and I will say at the end of this, it's needed, to put this as a goal of mine this year to further investigate. So this is more of an overview of what we met this summer, a couple of times, and then sharing what I have. So just want to thank my team members, because it really is a leadership team with a few other folks. So the principals, Mr. Tranter, Karen Downey, Dr. Jones, and Dr. Foley, because building base needs input into what's going to happen in the future. Cindy McGann is our WHEA Vice President. Dawn, Michelle, and Hillary were at the first meeting. Hillary was at the second meeting. Schedules just conflicted. John Stanbrook, who has my pocketbook, and he controls the dollars. Karen Villanueva, who is our transportation coordinator. Her assistant, Kristen Foley, was involved. And Corin Mayette, who's our educational technology specialist and data person, and was on this. And Noah Roberts, a senior, upcoming senior, was our student representative. So the first question we asked was why? Why are we going to investigate this? Why would I take this on as a goal? And one of them, the reasons was to align the elementary schedules for equitable district professional development. Our 3 elementaries are at 3 different times. We can never meet as a whole in the district to do PD. That's been since 2012. We'd like to look at that. And then question number 2 came from parents and came from students. There's a concern of the early start time and current research and what's best for students. Being the former principal when this changed and living it for 8 years, yeah, it's been a concern, and now I think I have an opportunity to look into it and see what we can do to modify, adapt it, and maybe make some changes to that 7:05 bell schedule. I put up challenges, but they're more like hurdles for me, because usually, we can go over or around a hurdle. Number 1, and it's the biggest one out there, is finances. This is going to be a one-time cost potentially. We reduced or we changed our bell schedules in district start times due to finances. Back at that point in 2012, there were numbers like $490,000, $500,000. We reduced the district budget to save that in transportation costs. One thing in particular around that is in 2012, I believe regional transportation reimbursement was about 65%, 70%. We're at close to 90 right now. So that's a big differential for me. If we do choose or investigate this to make some accommodations. Is that a one-time cost? If it costs me $500,000 next year in fiscal 24 to do this, is that a 90% reimbursable so that it's only a 10% really addition to the budget in fiscal 25? That's a challenge. Special education, right now we are in a groove with a 7:05 start. We're the earliest, so we're able to access special education vans for high school students, middle school students, and elementary students. If we make modifications, our vendors might not be able to give us those vans. In this transportation crisis in 2022, that's a real concern. Is it something we can adjust to? Absolutely, but we need to discuss that. Any changes to our current contract or our bell schedule need to be negotiated with WHEA. We have a very good relationship. I'm sure we could negotiate, but that is something that we just can't pass here at committee and make it happen, those things have to be contractually negotiated. High school schedules, athletics, we start in our league. There are a variety of schools that start later, 8 o'clock, 8:15, and our games start at 4 o'clock. Depending on what this committee or this group shows as a schedule, how would that impact the high school schedule? If the committee said, we think 9 o'clock is a good start time, that's what we want to do, that will definitely have an impact on high school schedules in our league. Student work schedules as well, giving them the opportunity way ahead of time to modify or adjust their student work schedules, because many of our high school students work after school now. They get out at 1:40, they do their homework by 2:30 or 3, and they're off to their job at 3 or 4 o'clock. And they can work 3, 4, 5, 6 hours during the work week in the current schedule. Elementary childcare issues, a member raised that issue that if you put high school later and they're not home before elementary, or they're arriving at the same time as elementary school students, there won't be people there to take care of their kids. So it's just something that we need to look at. One of the questions that came out were, if we do switch this and high school goes after middle school, and we have fifth graders in middle school, is it okay for fifth graders to be home alone before their high school siblings? Just another comment that I wanted to make you aware of. Dismissal times, and this is something that totally went over my head until Karen said this. Currently, our high school and our middle schools are 6.5-hour days. Our elementaries are 6-hour days. If we move the high school to a 8 o'clock start and they were dismissed at 2:30 or 2:40, and our elementaries remain the same at 9 to 3, there's no way buses could get to getting the high school kids home and be ready to pick up the elementary kids at 3 o'clock. So it's just something to look at. That was something I missed, and I'm glad Karen brought that up. High school students use extra time after school now in the current schedule. At 1:40, they're dismissed. You see kids in the library. You see them doing their homework before athletics. If we move that to a later start time, they won't have that hour potentially to do what they do, because they will be going to their athletic events, their extracurriculars, so on and so forth. Benefits to the current schedule. High school students have used that extra time between the end of the day and athletic practices for homework, for extra help, and for clubs and activities. Some kids can, at the 1:40 dismissal, can meet with their club at 2 o'clock for a half an hour or 45 minutes, and then make their practice for 3:15 or for their 4 o'clock game. So that's a benefit. Parents have older students at home to take care of their siblings. High school students can work after school, kind of what I said before, contribute to the family expenses and saving for college or post-high school. And it increases our professional development collaboration for at the elementary level. The reason I say already up front, we need to dig in deeper. There was a lot of what-ifs at our meeting. What's current research? You can flip, kid. What's current research? What our surrounding towns do? We know we're the earliest. I just know Marshfield's at 7:15. I know Pembroke's at 7:30. Then everybody is in variation between that time and 8:15 in our area. So to kind of collaborate and see what our locals are and see what would be good for us. Examine the current research. There's research all over the place, and making sure that we align with current research. Because current research also says middle school students should be up going later. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that in one fell swoop. We've talked a lot about high school, but we need to incorporate what current research is for middle school as well. And a couple members on the team said they would be opposed to moving the elementaries to that earlier time. They like the elementaries at that later time. Now, current research says elementaries might do better, pre-8 o'clock at that 7:30, 7:45 hour. Is research consistent? And there was rumor around on one of my email chains is, if this is an issue, and I know California is looking at a statewide movement to start times, is Massachusetts moving to this? So as we do the research, is Massachusetts going to come in, and I'll make that word unfunded mandate, make that a mandate for us anyway. So I will be looking into that. I think one of the things is we have to determine what our community wants, and that means parents and students. So not throwing out a survey in the next couple weeks saying, what are you looking for? But honing in after another couple meetings with us to give folks options of this is what we're looking at, to make sure that we're making the best decision for our students in our community based on what they're telling us. Because we haven't asked that in a full swoop question. So we're going to conduct surveys. Determine the athletic impact. Mr. Rogers will be involved in this committee as we move forward, or the subgroup, to get his opinion. He lives it with the variety of schools in our leagues and on the South Shore, what the athletic impact might be. Identify traffic too, because one of the issues we might have, depending on when we bring kids in, is the traffic patterns. If we go later or earlier, how will that impact the general commute on our major roadways in our locality? So we just want to look at that. Determine the real financial costs, and that's going to be something Karen and John will break out to me as we progress forward, what it's going to look like for additional buses. Back in 2012, we had 29 buses. Right now, we have 20. So if we just said fell swoop, $80,000 a bus to go back to 2012, at 80,000, it's 80,000 times 7 is $560,000. So that's what we might be looking at. But determining the real financial cost instead of guesstimates, and then draft start times, change the high school start time and align the elementaries. Is that both together? Is that one at a time? And I think depending on what we hear back from parents, that's where we're going to focus in on as we move forward into the fall and early winter. One of the things that came out of this as well is in Pembroke, they did move start times around. It took 3 years. I don't anticipate this taking 3 years, but I do anticipate this taking a while during the course of the fall and early winter, and seeing what we have, if we can make a move before the fiscal 24 budget, but that might not be a potential until fiscal 25. Not sure, but I just wanted to be upfront that in different districts it's taken a little bit longer, depending on how the community responds. Duxbury and Hingham flipped. The elementaries go first, the high school kids go last. If that's the movement of the committee, I don't know how long we would have to prompt our elementary parents of that change. So those are the pieces that I see that we will be working on. And again, outside of the committee, this is going to be a goal of mine as I present in September with more detail. The fact is we just don't have enough information from the summer project group to get out there. And this is going to be more of a building based. I welcome the committee members to attend, but this will be a leadership movement moving forward into the fall and early spring. Questions? Good.
The one thing to consider perhaps, and maybe you already have, is if it's changing the reimbursable, how would DESE look at that? I know there was quite a lot of discussion with when we went to mileage and formula. Are they going to look at it and saying, wait a second, you're doing a majority of this on our backs, and we don't allow that much of a change, or, yeah, how are they going to feel?
So a lot of this too, and this is for parents out there, and I know folks have asked about this, there are many layers, and it's not because that's a good question. We have to make sure that that's okay there as we make those changes and making sure we're doing the right thing. So it's something that I think is important and want to move forward, but they're just layers, and as we move forward in this, it's like an onion, you pull back another one, here's another question. But making sure that we're putting forth a real proposal to this committee, especially with a financial impact, understanding that. I did receive an email today saying, if we understand the financial impact, parents will help if that's where they want to go. So I think that financial piece, because this was a change, not educationally based in 2012, financially based, we'll start with that financial piece, because we all know, based on current research, later for older kids is probably better. But we need to pull those layers back and make sure we're doing it the right way.
And Fred, I mean, just having sat on those DESE calls when we were going through the transportation stuff, I think, I can't speak for DESE and I wouldn't even try to, but they seemed very clear that as long as it was a real expense, then it was going to be reimbursed. So I think we would certainly need to share what we're doing, But if we said, hey, our expense is going from here to here, and this is the reason why, because we added more buses, I would find it, we need to validate, but based upon everything I've heard, I would find it hard to believe that they would say you can't.
And all I'm saying is that it should be done in conjunction with knowing
Absolutely.
what the answer to that question. Because what if they say, well, what you're doing now is working. You graduate students at a higher rate than the state average. You're obviously doing something correct. You have a beautiful school. You are educating kids. Why are you changing this?
Yeah, I don't think,
I'm
yeah.
just saying, you,
DESE has been very clear that they're not in the business of managing the district. They're just looking to make sure that if it's a cost, it has to be real.
but is it, right, and who determines, is it real? I mean, let's face it, there are things that we could think of,
Yep.
That could perhaps change reimbursables or change different costs.
We can certainly talk
What
about
I'm saying is we should just check with them and know.
That's why
That's all.
that's the part of this process. I mean, that's the glory of this process. We don't have an answer yet. Those are the to-dos in making sure that we are doing the right thing.
No, just quickly, I think that's very appropriate to check with DESE, but to answer Fred's question maybe is, our community thinks it's important, and there's research to back it up. So that is reason enough for me to approach DESE and ask the question.
Steve?
I know this was years ago, but one thing we mentioned is, yes, so our kids do have jobs and they work. There's some that need to work, whether it's that they're helping their families or they need to help themselves. Situations are obviously very different. So I think just being mindful of that, to keep everything on a level playing field, I just think we need to, just stick that into part of the equation, make sure that those kids that, do need to work still get that opportunity.
Don?
Yeah, follow up, Mr. Boyce, through you, Chair. Some of the students who are working, Stephen, might actually be working maybe 5 to 10, right? Doing working fast food shift or something. So I think we need to be mindful of the opposite, where they're working late, and we're asking them to come in very early. And I know as a parent, I do everything within my home to help it to be healthy for my kids. One thing I can't control is the time they have to be in school. So this committee, I hope, can make a decision on that with your information, Jeff. I was really hoping we could get some more concrete data tonight. Really, it's going to come down to money. A lot of stuff, decisions come down to money. And I hope that this, you can have that information. The financial implications are really going to come around the timing, right? The timing, and when those buses are available, and how the timing, that's the decision made on schools and when they're going to start is going to have the biggest financial implication. But I know that one thing that we are seeing an increase based on reports from John Stanbrook, we're getting an additional $100,000 from the minimum per pupil increase. Rather than $30, it's $60 per student. So we know we've got $100,000 coming that we didn't know when we approved our budget. And hopefully we've gotten some additional reimbursement from transportation, that we have those funds. And I hope that we can use them wisely.
So in terms of goals, right, I think we said we were going to do those next meeting in September, right?
Sure. Yes.
So I think maybe you can kind of think about this, right? But it sounds like, just listening to what you presented and maybe the committee as a whole, if we want to do something for next year, there's going to be a budget implication, which means we probably need to kind of have a pretty good draft of, hey, this is what it's going to look like, here are the times, here's what we need for buses. Probably like, exactly, probably by like, okay, I'm just teasing this out. So that means the goal would probably maybe be something like, hey, by December, we kind of have to have all these questions answered as best you can, and say, this is, if we were going to do it, this is what it would look like. You've thought all this through. Hopefully we need to engage these parents and stakeholders along the way. And here is what you're proposing, and then here's the budget implication before we vote on the budget. Because if we do it after the budget, then it's...
And that's why I wanted it to be from out of my area, my leadership team, instead of the volunteers here, because I can pull my team together at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, this is what we're doing. And I think that's more efficient on this task right here, because it has to be done. If we're going to move on it, I need something by December.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, two quick things. One is, we could always do a separate article, perhaps, or for some sort of an override, if it is going to be something that we're adding to the, operating budget. That being said, to address Mr. Boyce, and I don't know if this is possible, but I don't want to not say it, would there be some way we could come up with a co-op program that if a student is working and they needed to leave their last period, to adjust the schedule so it's more like a study period, and they would have, full school backing so that they can leave earlier, provided they're taking care of their own transportation. But now they're able to work if that's a necessity within the household. We're not harming anybody and, creating a pathway. So
I think we're open to anything. And again, once we get going, and this group gets going, and I hear where our kids are at and our parents are at, it'll help guide, decisions as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
I just have a quick question. And maybe I'm just not thinking of it in order, but isn't it important to establish like the start times and things before we look at the financial piece, so then we have something to go on? Like, isn't that the most important thing? Are we starting at 9? Are we starting at 8? Are we starting at 8:30? Then you figure out how many buses you'll need? I mean, is that something that really needs to be established first?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So, we're looking at ballpark times, and Karen's already given me a variety of ballpark times. And that will depend on how much money each one is. And that's, again, what I'm looking at is, what does our community want? Is it 8:15? Is it 7:15? Because that's very different.
Right.
The problem is the flip side. That 9 to 3 or that 8:45, if we're coming in at Conley, Indian Head, and Duval at 8:45, and they're doing a 6-hour day at 2:45, and my high school kids are on at 8, and they do a 6.5-hour day and are dismissed, it's problematic. So that's that other layer. And depending on where we are with buses, and if I say, this is what we're going to do, we're going to have to add 15 buses to make that happen, that's a bigger financial piece. So a lot of moving parts when you have to look at dismissal, not just start. And the fact that everybody's not 6.5 hours. So it's going to be a work in progress. And I still want to hear from kids. We've heard, and Noah was very happy just to say, I'm glad you guys are talking about it as the student rep. He said, I think it's important, and we'll see progress in those conversations.
Yeah, I guess the one piece I would add to that, and I don't know how the committee feels about this, and maybe this is the wrong thing to say, but I think it sounds like we ended up with the issue because we had to make a financial decision that was difficult. So I would strongly encourage us now to think through, like, what is the right long-term way to do this? And sorry, Fred, but I'll circle back. Put the financial piece aside, just do what's right for the kids and the community, and then, okay, what's the financial, now we'll figure it out. So to Fred's point, whether that's, we got to give up this, or we got to override that, or whatever, but like, if we're going to do this, if we've been living with the consequence of squeezing the budget 12 years ago, let's now do it the right way and then figure out what is that going to look like for everyone. And if we can do it that way, I think we're going to be in a better place. We'll have to figure, again, I think we all can say we don't have unlimited funds. So but rather than getting, I want to make sure you don't feel the constraint of like, well, I can't even think about that because of don't start there, start with what's best, and then we'll have to obviously do something that we can do within our means.
John told me to have an unlimited pocketbook, so he's good. He said, just do what's best for kids.
I would design it that way, absolutely. I think that's the way to design it.
But I do want to, but I think, when I said the financial piece, because we didn't make a decision. That was never brought to our leadership team.
Right.
It was just told.
Right.
And make that accommodation. I think actually it was just a memo, you're starting school this time next year. And I was short 5 minutes, so I had to work to get 5 minutes back. George just had to make up a new schedule. So that's just what happened. So yeah, I want to get back to what's best for our community and then worry about it later, and then we can make that collective decision to say, modify it. What can we do? This is what we can do. But Karen has to be able to have a benchmark of what that means. And again, that dismissal time impacts, and that will depend on what drives that. If we all want our elementaries at the same time and not coming home super late, it might be adding buses to that route at the end, so.
And just with all due respect, I think it's one of the charges of this committee, to worry about the budget and how pieces fit. I know, and perhaps you can tell me the last projection for a level services budget for next year, was looking a little bit grim from what I heard. Whitman was like $1.2 million worth of an increase or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through the 5-year plan at next meeting, so I don't intend to do it now. But I mean, I think the reality is we can put ourselves in a box and say we're never going to move from the box, or we can say, here's what we need to do, and then figure out a way to make it work.
And as I've said for quite a few years, I think, once we establish where we're at and what it takes to keep us where we're at and know what the towns have to quote unquote spend because they don't have an infinite source of money, and we go directly to the taxpayer, and if we make our case and the taxpayer wants to do it, we get it. And to me, that's, the fairest way of being able to move our budget, so to speak.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, what comes to mind is that, to your point, Chris, I think our main goal is to do what's best for the kids that we educate, first and foremost. And we've always been, through that process of doing that, cognizant of the towns, and we have a history of working with them. So I don't see that changing, or I don't think it should change. I think the first priority should be what's best for kids, and then we figure out how to make it happen, working with our partnerships with both Whitman and Hanson.
Okay. Yeah, and I know, so we didn't have public comment on the agenda, but I know you're here, and so as long as you can keep it succinct, come on up. Yeah. And just name, address.
Annie Gray, 100 Whiting Ave, Whitman. I'm the one who has been talking a lot about adjusting the high school start time. I'm a mental health professional as well as a parent. I treat the students, all that good stuff. I like a lot of what you're saying. One thought that I think is pretty important, I'd love for your leadership team to consider when you're seeking from the community and the students what they want. I think it's really important to consider some education around why is this being discussed now, and the mental health benefits behind making that adjustment. So absolutely, right? I'm not the only one who lives in this community, so get opinions from other people. But when we talk about asking people what's important to them, if it's a physical thing, we educate them on what healthy food looks like. We don't just bring in Chick-fil-A every day, right, to the cap. So I think it's really important that we talk about the data and the research. Most people don't know this because they're doing other things with their day. I know this because this is what I do with my day. So I don't know everything, but I just think it's really important when you talk about seeking community comment that it might be fronted with some education as to, why are we talking about this now? Hope that's fast.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's keep going. I know we'll have plenty of time to talk about goals and start times. Or sorry, did someone?
We'll continue on. You want to start near K to 8?
Next presentation. I thought he was jumping in on start time.
So, thanks, folks. So, my group was Related Arts K to 8 Blueprint. And as I looked at our team, it was a great team. And so we had Steve, Michelle, and Hillary and myself. And the reason why I think it was a great team is because Steve has been around quite a while, always lends his historical view, and he also has a technical aspect. I think Michelle was a really great member of the team because she brings to us not only the parent view, but also the student view. And then Hillary brings to us the teaching view. So it was pretty good. When we started talking about it, it seemed that this was out there last year, and then we finished it this year. I didn't do PowerPoints because we were ready last week.
Excuse me, Mr. Farrell, we didn't do a PowerPoint because we have a blueprint.
Right.
We're going to lay it out on the table like Mike Brady. We don't want fingerprints all over it. But we have a blueprint.
So you all have a copy of it, and I think the biggest piece we looked at was, can we do more than just foreign language or just Spanish? So really what we really talked about was, how do we have the greatest impact for the greatest amount of people? And Michelle and Steve, you can jump in at any time. You can let me lead it. I don't know what you want to do. I'm here for you.
Oh, well, I won't mind. I mean, and thank you, George, and of course to Hillary, and we know she hadn't been here, but she gave us some excellent notes, and Michelle as well. You know, I did go back to when I first started at West Middle School in Whitman, seeing we had 2 middle schools, and I think it was 7th grade that I started with a foreign language, and it was French. And one thing, first of all, the teacher was Mr. Esposito. And if this man wasn't related somehow to Phil Esposito, he was amazing. And then, of course, it continued with John Ballard, who was in the middle schools at the time. A few names you might notice, but maybe not. And then coming up to here, the high school, we had Mrs. Rosenfield. I can't think of the other gentleman's name, but you know, it was something that was consistent. And I like the way that, even though I was thinking of it going backwards when George mentioned the STEM, the robotics, for the younger grades, still through grade 8, that whole piece about foreign language, whatever language it is just so critical. Now, do I speak French fluently? No. Do I have a French last name? Yes. More people call me Mr. Bois than they call me Mr. Boyce sometimes. But
I'm sure they call you many things.
But I just think it's so essential that these pieces, how they come, some are virtual, some are in-house, some are like kids that can do them on their own, at their own convenience. I think that's certainly the way to go, and it gives you I want to say a little lesser of a price tag. It probably could be more lesser of a price tag, but it just seems to have what we'd be looking for. It's a great start off and a great way to pitch it. Thanks.
I'm happy to have you talk about this because you did all the research here, which was wonderful.
Basically, in a nutshell, one of the things we're trying to look forward is, first of all, what is a language? And then second of all, what does it look like in today's day and age? So we talked about what we could do with our existing staff. We talked about what we could do with to bring in, introduce, and then we can talk about how do students learn best. And one of the things we want to do is make sure it's equitable for everyone. So basically the concept was that from a K to 8 perspective, we'd start with a STEM and robotics program from K to 8. And the reason why we do that is because there's no impact from a personnel standpoint in order to do that. Because what we would do is students beginning from K to 8 go to a related arts period. At the elementary school, they go to a related arts period with the librarian aide. Now the librarians are wonderful people, they do their thing, but you could lay a STEM program, and I have the details on what I think we could do and what we talked about and what we could further research. But you could do that through that period because that period's already built in. And what this is that in K to 2, you would do something like iRobot. Now, iRobot, if you think about it, there's flashcards, there's manipulatives, there's pen and paper, and then there's also you build up to small little robots that you can code with that we would be purchasing. So I'll talk about the budgetary implications after. But this would be done infused through the related arts piece of library where students go already. So now we're talking about literacy. And we're talking about literacy just from a different angle. We're talking about the early coding and the early STEM aspects of what students need. And we haven't yet changed our schedule or increased the price from a personnel standpoint. When we get to grades 3 to 8, in the grades 3, 4, and 5 that are still in an elementary, and 5 that's at Hanson Middle, we would do this through still the people there, but now we would move to a totally online aspect of it. The totally online aspect for it would be, it's called Robotify, and it's actually from an Ingenuity platform, but it would fit with all of the students' handheld devices. Again, there's time built into the schedule. When you get to the middle school, students already have either a STEM class or a technology applications class. This would also be infused in it, and it would be a formal way that students would be able to do it. So now you're looking at really pairing, what are we doing in middle schools for this? How do both middle schools get on the same page? And again, we have not yet increased any personnel. So that's what we're talking about. The yearly budget roughly to do this from a K-8 perspective at today's prices would be $55,000. And that would be what Robotify is, because it's an online program built in through your Chromebooks, and that would be for the K-2 iRobots. Now, we could say we can make that higher for the robots and experiences, but that's roughly the starting point from the research we've done. Now we talk about how do we introduce foreign language? And for years, like when I got here, we had French and Spanish. I quickly learned that we no longer did, about 8 months later. And then we had just Spanish, and then we lost that. Then we had nothing. Then we switched back and forth. And then we all said, well, how many people would it take to bring back a robust foreign language piece in? And that's what a lot of the work was done last year by this very same group. We were talking about we might have to extend the day. Then we were talking about, well, do we make it an academic subject? And then how do you do that over 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and how many people are we talking about? So we went from basically 6 adults needed to just do it in grades 7 and 8. Then we would have to hire 3 more reading specialists, because not all of our students can attain that at that level. So then we started saying, what else can we do in this day and age? So then we said, well, why are we looking at this way? If we're going to increase STEM and robotics, why aren't we then going to say, how do we make equitable foreign language for everyone at their own pace over the course of grade 8 or over the course of grade 7 and 8, because that can be determined, but we can do it and build it into the day, and then we can do it and build it into an online course that doesn't have to always be during the day. So the concept would be this. You would offer online Spanish to all 8th grade students in both middle schools. That way there are no equity issues. We're providing a service, we're providing a device, and then we'll talk about the support for that. Students will be able to work independently online with on-demand tutoring outside of school. So this program in Spanish 1 would be offered at grade 8 to anybody who wants it. You have the whole year to complete it. And you also have, it's an online class, but you also have on-demand tutoring built in. So if you're stuck, you can get that help right there. It's like the big red button. Then we would also hire, this is the point, we would hire then 1 Spanish teacher as we begin this. This Spanish teacher would be able to provide in-person support to the students who are interested on top of their related arts schedule through what's called Power Block or academic extension. So now students would have the ability to take all the classes we give them, and if I would really like to take this class, I can do it on my own. Therefore, I'm learning new skills. I'm learning what I'm going to do as I get older, but I still, because I'm an 8th grader, still have the ability to get support online and now get support in the form of a live human person. So now you might be wondering financial implication of that, and there will be one of those. But what we're saying now is that we're teaching students to get yet another language. They now have access to the language of coding and to the language of digital literacy, and now they have access, should they want it, to a foreign language in Spanish. Now, this person who we hire, teacher so-and-so, would be at both schools. They would be able to provide 2 days during an extension block for those students who needed help. Now, during an extension block, that is not a major academic subject, so no student would be missing that. And then they would also be able to provide this teacher an intro course to culture in a grade 6 for one school and a grade 7 for another. Now you're wondering why not both grade 6, because they have to travel back to both schools. But the concept would be is that students can take an online course, and if they don't choose to take that online course, by the time they leave 8th grade, at least they've been immersed in a cultural course when they move forward. You only have 1 teacher at this point. You could easily start this, again, with no equity issues going around. So then, let's talk about rough budget. So again, in the STEM and robotics elementary through grade 8 level, you are looking at roughly $55,000 a year. If we then look at foreign language at the middle school, roughly with today's pricing, you could receive the Spanish program through Imagine Ingenuity for $24,000 a year for Whitman-Hanson combined. So now, if you just can expand your mind one more step, this thing that you buy for the foreign language gives you the whole middle school curriculum. Every subject that's offered for students. So if this could really get off the ground, then you're no longer limiting students by the walls or the hours of the staff that you have if they want to take other subjects. But that's a later discussion. And then you would have one teacher be hired. So, and then that's roughly $75,000. And then the on-demand tutoring, which is the big red button they could hit when they're not in school, would be $4,400. So if you take the $55K, if you take the $103,400, you could get this off the ground and you could have it for roughly $158,400 or $160,000. And the purpose would be is that you would be making students competitive with other students locally, state, and nationally. I've already talked to the high school principal because any student who receives and graduates from this program or receives the certificate that they completed it would then go into Spanish 2 at the high school. So the human dynamic of the high school would change to match the Spanish 1 requirements that students would get. You're preparing students for the future with skills they need to learn because it's an SEL or a social emotional component in the areas of self-awareness, responsibility, and social awareness. Because you have to collaborate with others, you have to have some sense of groundedness to say this is what I would like to do and this is how I'm going to do it, and you want to make sure that you'll learn responsibility. You'll also be preparing students for technology in the format of class and learning, how we're learning, coding, and then the foreign language knowledge. And like I said, if you could extend that mind, you would also be offering students other courses possibly if this got off the ground. And then we talk about, are we taking union work away because we're bringing in this concept? Obviously, we'd have to explore that with the union, but what I'm saying is that this would be also exciting for staff because you could then be a staff member and have different opportunities for yourself if this is something you would like to entertain and do. The questions for you folks that you have to decide, because I'm not you guys, that's what you folks do, is this the path the school committee wishes to entertain for this year as we come into next year? That I don't know, and I would leave up to you. And I believe the next steps, and the group believes the next steps would be a discussion obviously by school committee members, the administration, and the applicable staff as to if this is something that could be explored. And then I think we would need to fine-tune the K-2 exploration of resources for the best fit. But our group was great because there was nothing left unsaid, and they all provided the input that said maybe we can accomplish more than just bring back a foreign language of Spanish and see what happens. So that was a great group to work with. Last year's group was a great group to work with, but so that's pretty much what we have.
Thank you, group. Any questions from anyone? Chris, and then Fred.
Yeah, so this is just an honest question.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the comprehensive presentation and outside the box thinking to try to get this done if we choose to prioritize it. But can you, and I ask because I really can't, if someone asked me, I couldn't give a real honest answer. As far as the actual value and the benefit of a foreign language, I understand the cultural component.
Yep.
And, you know, obviously learning the language. But what are some of the other takeaways that students can expect from taking up?
From a simple foreign language, like a Romance language like Spanish? Or are we talking about technology?
No, foreign language.
Foreign language.
Yeah.
So if a student gets access to a foreign language, and sometimes the earlier they get access to a foreign language, it does open up their neuron pathways so that they have the ability then to be able to deduce, decide, and then take complex tasks and get through them quicker. Now, if we're just talking about a language itself, it also gives students a better outlook into not only culturally what's out there for other folks, but it also allows them to now say, the world is just not what I know. The world is a bigger place.
So that's the primary benefit, I would say, right? Understanding different cultures.
Understanding different cultures and understanding, and now having to, but when you have to interpret something in a different language and then apply it either in written form or in oral form, and then back and forth with your native language, whatever that is,
yeah.
That does have benefits from a perspective of brain science so that you can now deduce and make determinations and make decisions quicker.
Mm-hmm.
But that's way scientific.
Is it also a benefit for students that are continuing into college that they are able to? Yeah.
Yes.
So
part of this too is students here are required to take 2 years of a language to graduate, and many post-secondary schools are looking at 3. So what students could do here is if they have Spanish 1 in 8th grade, take 2 and 3 here, satisfy that and then go on to different high school courses instead of taking a third year of language at the high school.
And I think another benefit would be is if we're talking about the robotics aspect, you would then be able to build not only your robotics classes here and your pre-engineering classes here, you would also be able to build the AP computer classes that we no longer offer because kids have access to that. And that's when I'm talking about SQL, that's when I'm talking about the different coding aspects that you can get, which is like the other foreign language aspect.
Thank you.
Fred?
And, just personal experience, 3 months ago, approximately a dozen clients out in Miami. And of those dozen, 10 of them do not speak English, Spanish only. And I'm lost trying to communicate with these guys, totally lost. Had to hire somebody out in the area to sit there basically and interpret, while I'm on the phone or I'm on a computer with them, of how we do things and what our programs are, etc. I'm 59 years old, or 58, soon to be 59, and never had run into this, but all of a sudden, to me, the career aspect of having that Spanish, you never know. Myself, I'm glad to see it starting, the proposal for middle school. I love to see it start, right when kids and we have any grandparents or younger parents. I mean, heck, Dora the Explorer. I think I've seen all of them, and yeah, I learned some Spanish there. So when kids are in kindergarten, their minds are open to it. If you started then. So I'm a large proponent of as many languages and as many foreign languages as we can teach our kids, because you never know what the way of the world's going to be 20, 30, or 50 years from now.
And I do think if we're talking about, again, languages, and we're talking about you're talking about American Sign Language just as much as you're now talking about what are the aspects of a technology language. Because if you see early coding and you see what young children can do and what that then leads to, that is a different language that they're working in. They might not know it, but again, if we go back to brain science, those neurons are firing and creating different pathways so that they will not only gain more worldly experiences, but they will become better critical thinkers.
And if I could just ask my questions now.
You only get one.
Would you be, in other words, would it be a prerequisite in elementary to have, K through 2, the iRobot program before you go into Robotify?
No, it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
The K to 2 aspect for the one that we researched and that would require more is not part of the 3 to 8 program. The 3 to 8 program is sort of on its own. But the K to 2 program is just to get students thinking about what is technology and how does it work in a group. And some of that is like, hey, here's a scissors, here's a hammer, here's a screwdriver, and with those things you can make it. So it really is age appropriate. And then it leads to like, here's a small robot, and if you connect the blue to the red to the green, then that robot can move or wave. So then you're talking about those are the pieces that the teacher would need 3 or 4 in a class, but this curriculum is all prepackaged necessarily so that I don't need to have a computer scientist teaching it, so people like, Steve's smarter than me, but people maybe like me and Don can teach it, so that's why.
You would be talking a total cost for elementary of $55,000.
For a total cost for K to 8 would be $55,000 yearly at today's prices in order to do this just for robotics and STEM elementary to grade 8.
Okay, so if it was the will of this committee to turn around and try and flip a switch tonight, could this be in place for the upcoming school year?
We got a lot going on for Monday.
I'll step in. So the point of tonight's meeting was to share information, right?
I think this is further.
I might be jumping the
And I
gun,
also
but-
do think you understand as much, probably more so than other folks, that there is a lot going on. So I think right now the priority is opening school. Before we add on to it, let's cross that bridge. So
I serve at the will of the superintendent.
I mean, the committee can do whatever they want. They want to make a motion to do it, they can do do it. I just,
I'll make this, Mr. Chair, I'll make this very quick, and thank you again, George. You all know Silicon Valley, and that's where a lot of the computer stuff started. You know, we'll go back, Steve Jobs, whatever.
I thought Facebook started in that.
Yeah, that started somewhere else. Well, that's a social media, so we'll take that out for a moment. Robotics, one of the first classes offered by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts through their state colleges was right at Bridgewater State. And yours truly, back in the 80s, not the 1880s, the 1980s, was in that class. And what happened with robotics is just, you know, they call it coding now. It's running that program. It's everything. If you think your computer sitting here is speaking English to you, it's not. It's going through its own main language. It's going through interpreting languages. And it's several steps. And so what this brings out, it brings out, I think, the possibilities of these young kids. And just holding my 4-month-old third-grade nephew yesterday, of what that mind is doing and thinking, and they just tear into it. I was asked one year to help some fourth graders who were excelling in math, and I was trying to teach them the machine language of a computer by doing ones and zeros. Spell your name, put your birthday down, do this, do that, and you wouldn't believe what you come out with and learn about just dividing things up into a binary language. Hexadecimal. Try counting your age in hexadecimal. These type of things, they're real, and they're still here. And I mean, I'm just so excited about this particular part with the foreign language.
Yeah, I think it might be a foray. It might be the way to have a foray into something different for students that could be beneficial long term. And also, you'd have the ability to be, we would have the ability to be a district that says, okay, a student has the ability and can complete a class that would count for credits online before they enter their high school. Now, we're the only ones that seem to hold back students sometimes with technology, I feel. But you'd have the ability to be able to talk about that, see that, and then let your students do that, all the while gaining greater technological and robotic experience at the same time.
With bang for the buck.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, I mean, I know you people long enough that we're trying
Michelle,
to do this.
and Michelle, now we got to move on to the next one.
Thank you, George. He did a lot of the research. This is great. I just want to say I worked on this last summer, the same concept, and we met with a couple of principals who just were absolutely against because middle school schedule, and we can't hire another person, and we can't make it work, and there was a lot of things that we couldn't do. So we came back this summer, back to the drawing board, and the fact that we can do this now, with basically hiring one teacher, but now offer from kindergarten to 8th grade this amazing coding program, robotics, things that'll just get kids excited. I just feel like this is the way to do it, which doesn't disrupt, like you said, a schedule. The kids are going to get extension. We're taking advantage of the teachers we already have. We're utilizing what we have and just reworking it, which I feel like is just what these kids need.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, group.
Thanks.
And then you want to go to the last group?
Yes, the last group is the Student Climate Culture and Support. That group had Chris, David, Don, and Glenn. I was facilitating until I carried over to Nikki, who got to become the facilitator of this group, so she'll lead that discussion.
Hi, good evening. Short and sweet, I promise. Because our group is fairly new, so we have had the opportunity to meet together, and really, we're really at the start of where some of these other groups I think were last summer coming into. We want to take this next year to do what a lot of these other groups have had the opportunity to do, which is to collect some information, to be honest. So our group, which was great to have these meetings, our group wants to look more deeply at our culture and climate. I think we have a lot of ideas and anecdotal information, but we want to dig in and find out where we are at as a district, what our schools are, how our schools are doing, and the ways we think about doing those things are through some formal survey, some informal survey, through interviewing, and then DESE also utilizes a lot of data that they collect through the district. So we would then take all of this information over the course of this year, kind of do a deep dive into it, see where we're at, make some really informed decisions, and any next steps that we want to do. So really, we want to just take the opportunity to dig in, see where we're at, and then meet as a group, come up with some themes, some ideas, bring that back to the committee, and then let you know what our next steps would be. So we're in data collecting mode before we can really make any real decisions. We need to see what our district is at. So that's where we are.
Any questions for Nikki?
Can we introduce Nikki?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not? Oh, I'm not out to go.
Nikki, go ahead, introduce yourself.
I am the Director of Equity and MTSS for the district, so I'm really happy to be here. So, and MTSS is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. It comes from the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's something our district is taking a real close look at. It's something that we should be doing, and so I'm excited to be taking on this initiative. It's a new role this year, and that's what I am going to be doing. So thanks.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Chris?
Yep. Nikki, thank you very much for all your hard work and guidance, I'd say, through this. I think this is a great opportunity to, like Nikki said, to really dig in to get some feedback from, I'd say, parents, students, all, different stakeholders. And we've always talked about engagement and how that's always been a challenge. To me, I think a great way to garner more engagement is to ask people questions and show them that their voice matters, and we share, their concerns for a healthy culture and climate, and hopefully, through this process, we'll be able to, reach out to people in our community, get some feedback, get some involvement, more support for the district, and I think it could probably roll into other benefits for the district as well, just from reaching out to people, getting them to participate, and listening.
Great. Dawn?
Yeah. Thank you, Nikki, for your time, too. And one of the handouts Nikki gave us, it just helped me. We hear culture and climate, and this just says climate is the collective mood or morale of a group of people. And I think of that, K through 12, we have students and how they feel and what their mood is within their school building. So I think the group had discussed that this is a pretty big umbrella, that a lot falls under it. So climate, I think it's distinctly connected at the high school level to what we just talked about is start time, right? How they feel coming in at that time and how they feel about it, and I won't rehash that. But then, people's perception of our schools too. We talked about from a parent lens, like, with how they see equity with their experience of their child in one building to the next, and services from one, different elementary schools and different middle schools. And then one other piece we touched on is related to that, and it's our enrollment. So when families decide to leave the district for one reason or another, not coming up to the high school here, maybe we can start to talk about getting feedback from them when that happens, right? It's not only, the families that are in the school right now, how do you feel, right? What can we do better? But those that have chosen to move on, maybe they've simply moved, maybe the parents got a different job. Okay, great, check that off, but maybe there's another reason, and maybe we can help that. So, and we talked about, or maybe with budget subcommittee, we'll talk about hold harmless, how our declining enrollment has been impacted and so forth. So that's why I say big umbrella. We're just touching the surface right now. A lot of work to do this year, but we'd love to get more information on our enrollment and also, graduating classes. If you have 275 graduate and you only have 200 kindergartners coming in, well, right there, you can't make up that 75. But if we've lost some along the way at high school, how can we help? And how can we offer things to keep them here?
And we did talk about that this would need to be a year-long commitment of us collecting this data, because there's a lot to kind of get at, and at any one time, people are going to have a particular mood or feeling and answer in one particular way. So we wanted to kind of have multiple opportunities to really get a sense of what people are feeling about, and like John said, multiple stakeholders, families, staff, students, to really get at a sense of where we are. So, yeah.
Great. So I think that wraps up the working group presentations. I would like to thank all the members of the team. That would include the district staff as well as the school committee members. I think taking time out of the summer to do some of these things, I certainly appreciate it in terms of everyone making that commitment to do that. So I think it speaks to the folks in this room and that aren't here that also worked on it, from the public's understanding that, you know, there is a desire to help move the district forward and think of new things. So really appreciate everyone taking the time to do that. I think that speaks a lot to the committee. So I'm not sure there are a lot of other school committees that are meeting on beautiful summer days or evenings, to kind of talk about this. So it's a good thing. So I appreciate everyone's time. In terms of time check, so I know originally we were going to do this last week and we kind of ran out of time, and so we're here and gotten through it. And again, I think it was good. But we are at about an hour and 20 minutes in, and we do pretty much have a full agenda. So I think we're going to try and move through things as best we can. If we get stuck on anything, I think I'd like to say, hey, let's move it to the next meeting. So we can certainly have some discussion. I don't want to shortchange anyone, but at the same time, I also respect folks who probably don't want to be here until 10. So we'll kind of move it along. Okay. So Jeff, you want to go through your stuff?
Yeah, we should be able to move through this pretty quickly. I'd like to introduce Brandon Frost. Brandon, come on up to the podium, please. Brandon's the new Whitman Middle School principal. Been on board since August 1st. Brandon comes to us from West Bridgewater, where he's the assistant principal, but Brandon is very familiar with our district since he lived in Whitman and now currently lives in Hanson and has 4 kids in the Hanson schools. Or not 4, you still have a baby at home.
Yes,
so,
I have a 1-year-old, so not in school
so
yet.
not yet.
Not in school yet.
But he's very familiar with the district, and so far he's hitting it out of the park, coming in cold on August 1st to get things going, and he's got a big day tomorrow, right?
Yeah. What a time to start. It's very excited to be here. Nice to meet everyone officially. But yeah, we got 6th grade orientation tomorrow, so I'm very excited. I'm a longtime high school English teacher, so reading and writing was my specialty, and I got middle school experience in West Bridgewater, which I fell in love with the middle school population, so I'm very excited to be here. And same school district, like us. Jeff was just saying, with my kids, so I'm very excited for that as well. So, yeah.
Well,
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions if you have, but if not, I'll...
Are you going to grade us if we send you an email? Do we have to grade you?
I do silently check people's grammar. Yes.
He's now the district proofreader.
That is
other duties as assigned. Thank you, Brandon.
But yes, thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good luck.
So opening of schools is next. We are opening next Wednesday for students. Faculty will be in on Monday at 9 o'clock in the McEwen Performing Arts Center. We are ready to go. We did a facilities check with Tim at Facility Subcommittee today. You're welcome to be on later on. I will announce again, but the building tours for the committee tomorrow is 11 to 2, so you'll get to see. We'll go through Facility Subcommittee some of the stuff that we talked about before, but school's ready to open. I will say our professional staff, we're fully staffed. But I am going to make a plea to the public right now. If you know folks, I'm in dire need of paraprofessionals at all levels, high school, middle school, and elementary. I am in need of duty aides, which are those lunchroom assistants for middle and elementary, and long-term sub-teachers, especially at, I had a resignation. It's hard. We hired a long-term sub at Indian Head, and she got a full-time job. So she took that, but she resigned yesterday. So I have a long-term sub position at Conley, 2 at Conley, 1 at Indian Head, a long-term sub counselor at the high school, and a long-term special education teacher at the high school. So on School Spring, if people are interested, all our postings are there. But paraprofessionals, and if you're watching the news nationally, statewide and locally, all school districts are looking for paras and for some support personnel. And I will also make a plea for North River Collaborative and for First Student. If you're interested in driving a bus or a van and you have those licenses, they are in desperate need of bus drivers still. And the lack of bus drivers will impact us in the future when people start calling out sick and things like that. So we are ready to go. I'm really proud of where we're at with the district, and we're anticipating and excited for students. Brandon mentioned our middle school orientation tomorrow at Whitman Middle and at the Hanson Middle. Elementary open houses are the day before school starts, which is next Tuesday, and the high school orientation, freshman orientation, was last night, and I heard it was outstanding. So we're ready to go. Kids are coming. Yes, Fred.
Is there a safety and security?
Yeah, it's on later on in the meeting. It's tomorrow night
okay.
at 6. Yep. Any questions on opening? Okay, COVID, extremely short. First time in 2 years, extremely short. So I asked Lisa Tobin today, I said, can you give me a COVID update? She goes, we're as close to 2019 as ever. So we're opening as normal. We're only asking students if they test positive at home to stay home for 5 days. That's the protocol. And masks in the nurse's office, yeah. Thanks, Church. And masks in the nurse's office. But we're there. We're not testing here. There's no more contact tracing. All of those COVID protocols are done, at least to this point. So school will open up as close to 2019 as possible. The special education statement of assurances, it's in your packet. I have to sign it, John has to sign it, Mike Loesch has to sign it, and Chris has to sign it. Before he signs it, he wanted you to be able to go through that and look at it. Basically, what it's a requirement by DESE that this is what we're going to do. We've always done it, but it's a statement of assurances saying we will follow and do what we say based upon our tier-focused monitoring review, which Lauren presented last year, which we did very well at. Just saying that what we have to do. So Chris needs approval or a nod from the committee that he can sign that. But it's a
seeking a motion?
It's a
Give me
requirement.
authorization to sign it would be awesome. Yes, please.
Motion to authorize the chair to sign the document as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone have any questions? They read it. It's pretty straightforward, state required form. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Unanimous. Thank you.
MASC. So
Yeah, so Fred had asked to put this on.
If you'd like to pass over to the next meeting,
We can.
I'm okay with that. I know time is of
It's up to you. So when do you have the dates handy? When do we have to decide on this?
well,
The renewal.
so I have the bill.
Oh, you have the bill?
I have the bill. The bill is $69.38.
6,938.
Correct.
Okay.
It was billed in July for FY23.
Okay. So we're kind of at the point where I think you had asked to put this on the agenda and you wanted to have a conversation of whether we wanted to continue with MASC.
Yeah, and
So maybe we can spend a few minutes on it.
okay, and my mindset is more perhaps send a letter because some of their leanings, I feel, become personal or political or however you want to say it. For instance, we sent a student representative to the MASC for incoming representatives of our high school, and it's a student rep. And they mandated that every student rep, in order to go, was vaccinated. And I feel that that's crossing a line. And I think that they have crossed lines in the past with some of their things that they've sent out. You know, and I want to bring it forward to the committee. I am not a fan of the way they do things. I understand they do charting of the course, and I understand that they do offer us some very different resources. They're also the only ones in town that offer those resources. But you do have other communities based upon, you know, the example that I just gave and other things that have been said with them that have stopped paying their bills and told them we don't even want to be a member. I think by law, even if we're not a member, they have to give us the charting of the course and whatnot. You know, that being said, you know, perhaps a strong letter saying that, you know, we feel that they're, you know, being political and that we would be watching things or whatnot, or we can just simply pull out. I don't know if that's in our best interest right now, where we haven't made any other arrangements and haven't verified whether or not, you know, charting of the course would still be available to us and other things. But I don't see them doing a whole heck of a lot for us as far as lobbying. I think Mars does a great job of notifying and keeping you in a loop and compared to MASC. And I just feel it's, you know, it's a shame when you have to tell somebody you have to be vaccinated in order to come to this meeting. Because now, to me, you're infringing on somebody's rights.
Okay. Jeff, I got Chris and then I got David, but before I do, can you just clarify what are the services that MASC provides?
They provide the online policy.
Okay.
They answer all of our questions pertaining to school committee.
Okay.
The charting, the course piece, and then the conference in this fall.
And workshops. That kind of was.
In various workshops.
I just wanted to kind of, before we get into
Yeah.
questions, I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page in terms of.
That-
what they are.
Anything we've asked them pertaining to policy, law, they've been able to.
Okay.
That was my question, Chris.
Sorry.
And, no, that's fine. And where Mars and MASC, do they overlap sometimes, or what is
Different organizations.
altogether different services? Yeah.
Mars is really all just regional schools. MASC covers everybody in the Commonwealth.
Okay.
School committees.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I find MASC to be a very reliable resource for the school committee. I've never really had an experience where I felt they were political. I feel as if MASC has provided the school committee and other committees and other districts with the resources they need to become better advocates. Even a couple weeks ago, Dawn and Michelle and I went to a summer institute to talk about student advisory committees and talk about the role of the chairmanship and better understand that, and also better understand how Mass General Law pertains to certain statutes that work towards the student advisory committees. Like recently we learned that it's within the students' purview to create their own agenda at school committee meetings. So I don't know, I find it would be hinder our ability to be the best advocates we could be for the school committee if we were to get rid of MASC. I just find it to be a very reliable resource for us.
Other thoughts, Michelle?
I totally agree with David. I'm only a year in as a committee member, and they've been absolutely wonderful answering questions. I've gone to some of their classes. I just feel like they're very helpful. And as far as like the vaccination, you can't even take a college tour that's like 1 hour unless you're vaccinated. So that's sort of where the world has been.
At a public college?
Yeah. So I just feel like that's
Yeah.
really the world we've lived in. There's a lot of people that ask of that without it being political, for me.
I guess, Fred, I would take it a step further. I think, as a general comment, like if we look at the last 24 months, there's been a lot of things. I'm not making excuses for MASC. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that I think political tensions have run high over the last couple of years. I think that's a fair statement to make. So that's, I think that's just tough right now in terms of some of that, but I'm not making any excuses. I'm just saying I think there's been a lot of political tension over the last couple of years. So this is, if this is the first time it's come up, this is
I don't feel
not surprising.
that an organization should have the right to tell somebody what they put in their body or they can't participate. Now, if you're looking at a college, then maybe you say, okay, well, I know that's not going to be the college for me. If it's a state school, I hadn't realized that. I think it's 110% as wrong as MASC. Yeah, that's my personal belief.
And so I think, so to your point, right, I think if your opinion is, hey, look, I don't think it's right for someone to say that this is what you have to do, again, if I've learned anything over the last couple of years, that's your opinion. We should all respect it. I think what we have to then figure out is with someone like MASC, whether we all agree or disagree with the position, are we willing to sever the relationship based upon that? Because that's really the only course we can take right now, because we have a bill. We're either going to pay it, or we sever, or we don't. So I
would like to see us send a letter, even. Just...
Yeah, and maybe we can make a motion, because I want to hear from everyone, and then I said my piece. You haven't said your piece. Go ahead, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve and pay the bill of $6,938.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Yes.
I feel that perhaps we should do something as far as a letter goes. I mean, we owe the money. We're already into the fiscal year. But I would respectfully like to perhaps take a look at what their policies and procedures are.
Just as a point of order, we have a motion on the table, so we can amend. You can make a motion to amend the motion, or we can discuss the motion specifically and then talk about additional motions or actions, right? So the motion,
talk about additional.
The motion at hand is
To pay the bill.
To pay the bill. So any further discussion on that?
No.
Any further discussion on whether or not we should pay the bill that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, can I add to current discussion? So I just feel like the idea of us severing our relationship because of a matter that I would say is a personal matter, I don't think it's one the school committee should take. I don't think it's within our purview to necessarily express our displeasure pertaining to vaccination. If Mr. Small himself wants to write to MASC, it's within his purview and his right, and he can do that, but I don't think it's one of the school committee, and I don't really think we should be discussing severing our relationship with MASC, given their track record of being able to help us and provide us with the resources we use. Another example would be Policy Subcommittee, where every year MASC provides recommendations and updates to their policies that we, for the most part, implement, and a lot of them have to do with recent court rulings and changes to Mass General Law. I think losing that resource could put us in a position where we're not up to date with current statutes, and we wouldn't want to put ourselves in that position again. So I think it would be good for us to stick with MASC and utilize the workshops and utilize the resources that's provided to us so we can continue to be the best advocates we can be. And by being knowledgeable and being able to educate the community, then in return we are helping our district and favoring our student body, which is the stakeholders we're here to represent. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
I want to respond to the remark. What I am saying is, I feel it should be somebody's choice. I'm not saying...
It's your personal
I'm not
opinion,
saying
right?
my personal opinion is you should be vaccinated or not vaccinated. What I'm saying is, it should be your own personal choice. That's all I'm saying.
Move to the vote.
And they are mandating to the students that you have to be. And that's where I feel they're being political in it.
Yep, and
Understood.
I think you've expressed your position, and everyone has as well. So at this point, unless anyone has any further, let's move to vote. Any further discussion? Great. All those in favor? And the motion is to, the motion is to renew and pay the bill?
Approve and pay the bill.
Approve and pay the bill. All those in favor?
The money.
Aye. All right, great. I think that was unanimous. Any additional motions? Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next.
I would like to move that we examine the situation and perhaps write a letter to MASC from the school committee asking them to look at their policies as far as mandating things or mandating vaccinations, you know, for people to attend a seminar. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Not hearing one. Their motion does not move forward. Okay. Moving on. Regional agreement. So there have been discussions that we talked about several months ago. We had a takeaway as a committee that Jeff and or I think it was supposed to be Jeff and I, but I think the first one I did because you had something going on, would reach out to both boards of selectmen and ask them for their feedback in terms of the regional agreement. So the Whitman meeting I went to on June 21st, I think I have the date right, and then the Hanson meeting was on July 26th. They're both available on YouTube. I'm not sure if you've all had a chance to look at them and that conversation, but it's there. I would summarize it very succinctly as the general consensus is they would both like to move forward. They both see the need to update the regional agreement for a variety of reasons. And the general consensus, because it was depending, I think we kind of got there in both meetings, but there was certainly some discussion, was, you know, probably start small, right? And just, there was definitely some clarity around, it was a really big committee last time, and we brought a lot of people in, and there are certain groups that are charged with this now. So we can do whatever the committee would like. So there's a couple things. So one, we can, if all of you have already had a chance to kind of think through this, then we can talk about forming the committee tonight. If some of you are sitting there saying, I'd like to hear exactly what was said because I haven't, we can certainly do that between now and next meeting and talk about it next meeting. So is everyone prepared to move forward with doing something here, or is there anyone that wants to make sure or go back and listen to tape?
Can you just speak to where Hanson is on their study that they...
So I can't, because I just saw something in the Express today as I was literally coming here, and there was a meeting, and again, that might be something that we want to look at. I think the takeaway was they're not moving forward with it.
They're not moving.
Generally speaking.
The article said, you know, to some extent, not time to move forward.
Yeah, but I haven't had a chance to watch that.
I did watch that meeting.
Yep.
And given the financial impact, which was approximately increasing their annual budget to about $25 million, including they would have to buy and pay for a high school.
Yep.
They felt that at this time that was not feasible and it was off the table. You know, they're still gonna, I don't know what they're gonna do, is keeping anything options, as Whitman has options as well. But I don't see them, and they don't see themselves, more importantly, was the gist I interpreted from that meeting.
They also mentioned about the regional agreement in the same conversation, kind of, to do something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of go back to the question, are folks ready to have a conversation about?
Form a regional agreement?
That's where I'm going to take the conversation, unless people want to think about this a little bit more and look at some of these meetings that transpired. So is there anyone against us now moving forward with forming the committee that wants more time and pass over this until next week? Are we good to do this now? Everyone's good to do this now?
I haven't watched this July 26th Hanson meeting, but I don't know if that's relevant.
It's up to you. Again, it's totally, I want people to be comfortable. It's an important decision to make. So we can do it now or wait until next week. Would you prefer to wait until next week?
Not next week, next meeting.
Or sorry, next meeting. Or do you want to rock
Well, we can
forward?
talk through this. What are we looking at?
So ultimately, I think we have to build a committee, right? And again, it's the will of the committee. It's a subcommittee of the school committee. I'm just going to throw this out to get the conversation started. We can do whatever the committee wants. I would suggest we do one school committee member from each town, one select person from each town, the town administrator from each town as voting members, and then we look to consider non-voting members, which would include the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the business manager, and a finance committee member from each town. That's what I'm throwing out there to start the discussion. We can go in a million different
Keeping it
directions.
small, that's a good idea.
But the voting members would be 2 school committee members, 2 select board members, and 2 town administrators. So technically, it would be a voting committee of 6.
Are you asking for volunteers? Because I'd like to volunteer. If that's-
So no, we're not at volunteers. We're at construction first. So this committee is charged with constructing something. I think what I said to both boards of selectmen, select board and what I said to the select board in Hanson and the selectmen in Whitman was basically, we can always build something and then add to it. In my experience, I've never seen a committee get smaller. I've only seen it get bigger, or a subcommittee. So to me, I'd rather start smaller and add if we need to after maybe we have a separate conversation. But the charge right now is we got to do something. We got to build something, and then we can figure out who wants to be on. So thoughts? I got Beth, David, Fred.
I think it's a good idea, just to what you suggested, because I was going to say, everybody's talking about they want a smaller committee, they want a small, so I think that's the best way to go, at least to start. And then if you need more opinions or whatever, then you, like you said, you can always enlarge it, but I've never seen one get smaller from being.
That's fine.
Well, I shouldn't say that, because a lot of times, the last time, a lot of people didn't show up.
They were still technically on the committee, though.
Yeah, but I mean, so technically, it did get smaller, and that was a problem. So if we start with a smaller group, I think you're more apt to get the full participation, is what I think, that's personal opinion.
I agree with what you had, but I would also add one citizen from the town of Whitman and one from the town of Hanson, whether it's a voting member or a non-voting member. And then the question I had is, how would the quorum work for voting members and non-voting members? So like, for example, with the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, say half the members showed up, but the majority of the members that did show up were voting members, would they still be able to meet and deliberate? Or does the quorum apply to non-voting members as well, or only voting members? Do you know?
So I don't know. My thinking, which dangerous, my thinking would be that the quorum would be comprised of simply the voting members. Like you would need 4 out of the 6. You would need a 4 out of a 6 vote to do something. I also kind of like the fact that you'd have 3 from each town, so if it's a 3-3, it kind of forces find consensus, right? Opposed to one group having a tiebreaker over the other. That was my thinking with having a 3-3 and an even number committee, because usually you don't do even number committees, but to me this made all the sense in the world because it forces consensus. But we can do whatever. I don't know what the legality is of voting members or non-voting members, but I was anticipating the vote. It would be the vote. You're a non-voting member, you have a seat at the table, you participate, but you're not a voting member, and technically, you're not required for quorum. That was my thinking.
Just want to make sure. Yeah.
Yes.
My thinking as far as the committee goes, 2 school committee members, 1 from each town, or 2 from each town, rather. So that's 4. You would want to have a selectman from each town. You're up to 6. then you'd want to have a citizens representative. That would be the voting members. I think that Mars should be consulted and ask them to come in and help construct. I forget what they charged us, but it was a very nominal fee. And they have, granted, we have a foundation to work off of, but they would know what updated laws and rules and regulations are, even compared to 4 or 5 years ago when they did it before. They come out a couple times, we all sit down, we go over things paragraph by paragraph and come up with a nice template.
Okay. Other thoughts on construction? Yes? Chris?
Could you reiterate your...
So what I threw out there, and I'll say what I threw out there, and I'll say what Fred threw out there, if I got it right. So what I suggested was, for voting members, it would be 1 school committee member from each town, so there's 2. 1 select person from each town, there's 4, and the town administrator from each town, which would be 6. And then non-voting would include the superintendent, assistant superintendent, business manager, and a finance committee member from each town. That's what I threw out. Fred said, I think basically the same, except 2 school committee members from each town.
2 school committee members from
And
each
a
town, and the citizens.
And David also threw in a citizen.
And the administrators could be non-voting members,
Correct.
That's the piece that you switched.
you know, as far as that goes, so.
And you didn't include finance committee.
I did not. I did not.
Yes.
Have you spoken to the chair of either finance committee? Okay.
I have not spoken. So the only conversations I have had on this matter are with those 2 conversations that we had. So I wanted to bring it back here. We can all have a conversation and we can go from there. And if that's, hey, before we do something, this is what we're thinking, and you want us to go back, we can make another field trip. But are there any other, because I want to, again, we get some different ideas, so that's great. Any other ideas in construction of the committee itself?
I just say that the 2 school committee members, 1 from each town, board of selectmen, 1 from each town, town administrator from each town. I mean, those are the principles, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of, going through this.
Yeah, I think, Fred, so I had originally thought about 2 school committee members from each town, but this is my thinking, and I'll share it publicly. I'm thinking if we have 2 school committee members from each town, then I would assume that we're probably going to have 2 select people from each town. So now we went from a committee of like 6 to a committee of 10, just like that. Because I don't see, if I was, and this is a dangerous game to play, but if I was a member of either select board or selectmen, I'm not sure I would say, oh, yeah, we're going to have 2 school committee members, but we're only going to have 1 select. I could just, correct. So I think it's, to me, it keeps it simple. And the reason I didn't include citizens at large is these are all elected, we have 4 elected members that are charged with representing these folks. So that's kind of how I looked at it. But I didn't really think about the town administrator. I guess somebody said town administrators is voting or not, so we can talk that through too.
I think it's very important to have citizens at large. I think that they can provide valuable input, as to from a citizen's point of view. We did have them, and I just go back to the Mars committee, not the last committee, but the one prior to that. And yeah, it went around the table, but we had no issues. It worked very well. And it was, and we had very constructive meetings. We had there was one select person from each town. That did work. And we just pretty much, if I remember correctly, sent out the invitation, and they chose the citizen at large. They did have a FinCom member, or the chair. It was the chair from Whitman, and I don't know if it was the chair from Hanson that was on it. And it just went nice and smooth.
Yeah, done.
Would support 2 school committee members, 2 board of selectmen, 2 town administrators as voting, and 2 finance committee members, I think is real important, more so than citizen at large.
2 from each town or 2 total?
The finance committee.
1 from, sorry.
Yeah, 1 from each.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I would leave it at 8, those core, School Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator, and Finance Committee.
As voting or non-voting, sorry.
I don't know, but Finance Committee, they're appointed by the moderator in both towns, so they're not elected officials, but they're appointed, so I'd be open to giving them voting. So that's how I feel.
Okay. So we're probably going to need a motion from someone at some point, but David and then Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about my rationale for citizens at large. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the regional agreement, in order for it to be ratified, it needs to go through the school committee, it needs to go through both towns' board of selectmen, and it needs to go through both towns' town meeting, right?
100%. So there's plenty
And
of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity, right, and Desi somewhere along the way. So there is a lot of opportunity for participation and transparency from anyone that wants to along this entire way.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree with you there, but I guess my thought process is because it goes through town meeting, it would be important, in my opinion, to have a citizen from both communities involved, whether it's through I would prefer a non-voting position, because the issue I'm trying to figure out in my head is how would we go about appointing someone to that regional agreement amendment committee and have it be apolitical or something along the lines of that. So that would be my concern with having the citizens a voting member, but I think their input is necessary because they're a stakeholder and it's going to go to these two communities. And I feel like having that person involved, having a pulse on what's going on in the day-to-day deliberations might give us a more favorable outcome when it comes to that time to ratify it. So in my opinion, actually, I'll make the motion. I motion to have the regional agreement consist of two school committee members, 2 board of selectmen, and 2 town administrators from each town as voting members, and 2 finance committee members from each town, and 2 citizens at large as non-voting members.
And when you say from each town, so it would
One from
essentially
each
be
town,
one
sorry.
from each town of everything you just said.
2 total, yes.
I
Yeah.
second David's.
Thank you.
If I could just ask a question.
Yep. So we got a motion and a second.
All right, so
Yeah.
did you you omitted, I should say, the superintendent as non-voting members? Sounds awesome. Say it again.
Sorry, that's,
Yeah.
no, you're right. Yeah, let me
Amendment,
amend
I'll
that
second.
motion to include the superintendent, the director of business and finance, and is there anyone else from? And George, of course, yeah. You're going over there, George.
You don't have
They're hijacked.
to. George is going like, no.
All right, is that clear?
And we're still.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll
Right.
second the change.
Discussion. And I would love to see that motion include getting Mars involved and having them do the framework, because now you're going to get a legally compliant document right up front. So I would motion to amend to include the men from Mars or women, should they see fit, or at least to determine what the cost would be, so this committee could make an informed decision.
And so, Fred, I guess where I was going with that before, you could still make your motion if you want. Where I was thinking is, like, that would be the purview of the subcommittee. Like, the first thing they should do is figure out, what do we need? Do we need, right? So I was almost thinking, to me, it's like, that's, the subcommittee should do that. I'm not sure we should say they have to do that as a requirement within the subcommittee. I just think they're going to get there anyways.
Yeah, but that
let
gives you
them
the
do it.
legal basis, because let's face it, it's about, making sure it's legally compliant. You go back to the agreement that they drew up, making sure it's legally compliant for 2022. And the other fight's going to be, or discussion, let me rephrase that, is going to be, and it's going to have to come back to this committee anyways, is going to be on representation. That's the one thing you hear out of Hanson about voting and having members.
So I think before we, again, tell the committee who they should use and what they're going to discuss, I think we should create the committee and let them do it. But if your motion is to require them to use Mars, then do we have a second?
Yeah, but we can vote on the first one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Don't motion on top of the motion. Hang on. So unless you were looking to amend the motion?
Well, I was looking to amend. I think that'd be the easiest part, but
is there a second to amend the motion that the
that the committee gets an assessment and a price from Mars to have them facilitate the agreement?
So there's the amendment.
Or I'll do it as a separate. I don't care.
Okay, so you're withdrawing your.
I'll withdraw my amendment.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we have an amendment
And you have a second.
You have a motion.
Motion and a
Oh,
second.
no, you have an
have a motion.
amended motion.
I know, you guys are jumping all over the place. We have a motion and a second right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 school committee members, 2 board of selectmen, or select board member, one from each town, and 2 town administrators as the voting members. So 1 from each town, and then as non-voting, a finance committee member from each town, a citizen from each town, as well as the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the business manager. Is that what we have? Okay. Any discussion on that? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say, as it sits now, and to your point earlier, 2 school committee members, 2 board of selectmen. I just think that's a natural. We talk a lot about the partnerships. They're your representatives in the partnership, and I'd like to see that remain as the voting members.
Okay.
So it's 6 voting members.
There are 6 voting members, correct. Any additional discussion? Okay, we will move to the vote. All those in favor? Aye, fantastic, unanimous. Okay. So Fred, do you want to make a motion before
I'd like to make a
move on
motion
to populating or try to?
That the men or women from Mars are consulted and we hire them to facilitate the regional agreement to ensure that it's in proper legal language for 2022 and beyond. And they're experts at that.
Okay.
Second.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, so again, I'm always talking about this, going back to our partnership, right? And if we're forming a committee among our partnership, the members of our partnership, I have full confidence that we can lean on them or whoever's representing the communities in the school committee to do due diligence. And of course, we're going to consult with Mars. And I feel it's a bit of an overstep at this point. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Anyone else? Fred?
Just, and I know you weren't around for the original committee that I'm speaking of, but they were very organized. They came in, they sat. They took nothing away from the committee as far as how the committee wanted to run things. They were there to have, this is what we've used for templates, this is the language we've used, this is what we found is effective in agreements, and they gave their reasonings, and then we went, pretty much line by line right through it. Now, that may or may not be needed. That's the way we had done it, and I just found them to be a terrific asset in that successful committee.
So I'm not advocating a position that would exclude Mars at all. They're a valuable resource and they should be used. My point is, if we're going to form a committee among our partners, we should turn it over to our partners and have at it.
So I guess just as a comment, I would agree with, I guess maybe that's where the disconnect is. I'm not against Mars, but again, it's like, what was it, Bill Parcells? If you're going to have me, right?
You're still doing the grocery shop.
So I guess if it was, hey, we recommend using Mars, I'd be fine with that. I just have a real hard time, saying like, hey, we're going to form this subcommittee and we're going to charge them, but the first action we're going to do is you have to do this. So I'm just against that.
What they do is they suggest and they say these are things that we've seen in other agreements.
Fred, you're missing the point. My point isn't that they shouldn't use Mars. My point is us telling them they have to use them before they've met. That's my point. But whatever. Other thoughts? Does everyone understand what we're voting on? And kind of both sides of it? Yes?
So on just a point of clarification, so the point being is that obviously it is more of the directive of the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee to look into Mars, and you're saying it's not really one of the school committees, so why would we create a subcommittee to basically direct them to do something that would be within their own purview, correct?
100%.
All right, cool, just making sure.
That's kind of where I'm going.
Got it.
All right, any additional discussion on that one? That's cool.
Run to the ladies' room.
We still have a quorum. All those in favor of the motion? All those against? So that's 5. Okay, so I think we still. Wait, do we have enough? Was that 5-2?
5-2.
2-5?
We got it.
Yeah, 2-5.
But we need 6?
No, we have 8, right?
No, there's, wait.
The committee's still 10. Right? Or does that not count?
No, no, the
Oh, we
majority
got
of
5.
the
All right,
quorum.
we're good. All right, so the motion doesn't carry. Sorry. I'm good.
Only budget votes like that.
Good.
Been a long night. All right, so now, do we want to move to try and populate this committee?
You want an honest answer? I would.
Wait
Want to
till
let it
all-
marinate?
everyone's here. Wait till everyone's here.
Wait till
Even
everybody's
better.
here.
Thank you, I'm good with that.
September meeting.
I really
we'll
want
post
to.
it, and then we can send out the vote from here to the selectmen, and they can put it on their agenda.
Even better, so that way we don't get ahead of ourselves.
Correct.
Let's make sure that there's nothing that they give us feedback.
Okay.
Hey, can you add this, or did you think about that? All right, fantastic. Thank you all for helping us get through that. Okay, moving on.
In your packet, before I sign anything, DESI requires us to have an MOU or memorandum of understanding with our local PDs and an SOP or standard operating procedures. I put together these documents, shared them with both our SROs, Chief Mix and Chief Hanlon. We're all in agreement. And then I sent it to Andy Waugh, who said they fall right in line with the DESI template of an MOU and an SOP. So I'm just looking for your approval for me to sign this, or if you have any questions before I move forward and sign it.
Real quick, and just to reiterate, the chiefs have already given
Yes.
their blessing.
Yeah,
and
the two SROs, Chief Hanlon and Chief Mix and I met last week to make sure they were very good with it, and this falls right in line with the template that DESI.
All right, motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion questions? Yes.
Question. Did we already have an MOU and SOP in place?
We had an old one, and
Okay.
it was time to update it.
So can you tell me what may have changed on this?
New state laws around what information can be given out to local PDs.
Thank you.
State law from 2020 or 2021.
Okay.
So ours was out of date.
So not as old as our regional.
Correct. Now 1991. It was more like 2018.
Any?
So that's
Sorry.
information regarding students, student records
Correct.
that should remain private
Correct.
and not necessarily
That
at
a
the,
local law enforcement officer or SRO can access. There has to be certain stipulations of why they can access that record.
in
In
protecting
the past, it
students.
wasn't. It was more open. State law changed.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move to vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Or 7 of the.
A handful.
John, brief,
It's changing every time.
loud and brief, man.
Yeah, loud and brief.
Loud and
Short
brief.
and loud.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to speed read as fast as I can. The first document in your packet is state aid update, and I wrote on it document 1, doc 1.
Yep.
I handed out a similar sheet back in June, I think, the last time we were together. This is what it ended up being as a final state aid for the cherry sheet for fiscal year '23. The cherry sheet is just another word of the state, words for the states, how much the state's going to give us in state aid. So again, very quickly, the column in fiscal year '22 where it says actual pre-audit, those are the real numbers that we have right now for revenue. And I'm hoping at the next meeting I'm going to be able to go over the revenues and where they, where we got those. So maybe try to move quickly tonight and maybe save that for any questions on that for next September, whenever 14th, I think is, whenever the next meeting is. But just the way this report looks, how it works is the top half is the comparison between the actual and the budget of the final state aid. And very quickly, it looks like it's a $224,000 drop in state aid, or 0.89%. That's down on the bottom right under those columns, but it really isn't because of the change in regional transportation methodology from the per student to the per mileage. We were able to get the fiscal year '21 second payment to go towards the mileage reimbursement, which is a larger reimbursement on our end. And again, I can go into that more in September, but that worked out in our favor. We were able to get that check in before June 30th. So down the bottom where it says without the transport change in a highlighted amount, that's the amount, is the increase, taking that out, taking that one-time change in methodology, or 0.72%. The second half of that report is a comparison between what we voted back in May and where the budget with the final state amount. Again, we didn't know what it would be when we had town meetings, and I think it was May 2nd. Again, that has the larger regional transportation number in there. So it looks like there was a drop, but there really wasn't. Down again, further down where it says without transport change in that part, it's 176,228. We're up 0.69% over what we budgeted back in May. So that's the final revenue numbers as I see it right now. Again, back in a couple meetings ago, whenever that was, we had some discussion about the state budget process. So that's in the bottom left. That was the final state budget process for this budget, fiscal year 23 state budget. Started with the governor's budget on January 26th, ended with the final budget being passed on July 31st. Actually, I think they went further into August 1st, early in the morning, and they called it July 31st. They went to the very last minute they could possibly do on the state aid. So that's very quickly on that. The second document that's related to that is the actual cherry sheet amount. It looks like this. That's from the Department of Local Services, a DLS. You might say, why, where's, on the DLS form, there's school choice receiving tuition. I don't see that anywhere. Where did it go? If you remember from our discussions in the last year, school choice is a special revenue fund, and this front page is just general fund revenue. So that's why it's not on there. I put that proviso on the right above where it says state budget process. I wrote offset receipts aren't on there. So that's as fast as I can go on state aid. If that's okay, and we can hold off any of the questions for September 14th meeting. Then I'd like to keep moving. Our next one is the Hanson Board Anticipation Note number 2, sales results. We had a sale of a bond anticipation note related to the Hanson HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It was for $525,000. You see in the top right, this is the form from our financial advisor, Unibank. It just gives the details of what it was. It was $525,000 with a date of July 22nd, and we had 2 bidders. Newburyport 5-cent Savings Bank was the winning bidder at 2.77%. It's a 1-year note. It's being assessed to Hanson only because it's a Hanson only project. So that's it there. The next one was audit firm discussion, and I'd just like to try to, if we could, to pass that over to another meeting, just for, if that's okay with the chair.
Yep, of course.
That's okay? Okay. Look, just pass that one over to the next meeting. And then the last one is the Copy Center bid award. There's 2 documents. First document is the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30B, which is the Uniform Procurement Act. It's a chart of how we're supposed to procure things based on dollar amount. And then the second document is the bid that I received from Collegiate Press for $918,315.66. Again, I'll move very quickly. We bid this out. I bid this out. We advertised it properly everywhere. It says we should have in the time frames. We should have combis, the district's bulletin board, the website, the good and services bulletin, in the Whitman-Hanson Express. I added some addenda. Sorry, I took foreign language when I was a kid, and 900 years later, I still remember that addenda is the way to do a plural in Latin. I added some 2 addenda. We had 28 bid questions that were asked by bidders. We postponed it at the request of one of the bidders. I received 1 bidder by the deadline of July 21st at 11 o'clock. That bid was opened and read by me aloud in my office at noontime on the 21st. We did receive another bid, but that bid was not delivered to me in time. I consulted with the Inspector General's office and District Council, and I have to reject that bid as non-responsive. It wasn't received by the deadline. The bid documents clearly stated that late bids shall be rejected as non-responsive. So we only got 1 bid that was on time. It is Collegiate Press. It's $918,315.66. Last year, the last 3 year, fiscal year 22's unaudited amount that we paid to this, because they are our current vendor, around $894,000. I don't have the exact amount, but it was somewhere around there. So we're working on a tentative contract. I just received it. I haven't, because of other things going on in the district, I haven't been able to sit down and hammer out the contract with them, but my request tonight would be for the committee to authorize me to award the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 25 copy center operations service bid to Collegiate Press at the price of $918,315.66, pending successful final contract negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? So just to clarify, the increase is roughly, how much did you say? Contract to contract?
Around 30 grand.
30 grand, so roughly.
My math is terrible at this late hour, but I'd say something like 2.8%.
So around 3%. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. So sub 3%. Okay.
Somewhere, yeah.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. But.
Yeah, no, I know. We're doing quick math, but yes, it's in the ballpark. Any other questions? I just wanted to make sure everyone kind of understood this is just something we're moving forward. Costs go up. Okay. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, subcommittee reports. Do we have anything from Pilgrim or?
Yeah, we do not meet until the first Thursday in October. Hold on.
Sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. We do not meet Pilgrim Area Collaborative until the first Thursday in October. We've got a summary report from the executive director, and just basically things that were going on and so forth, and we're running all right now.
Good.
We'll also have elections. We reorg during that meeting in October.
Okay.
Facilities, Dawn?
Sorry. Before this meeting, we had a facilities meeting. I was elected chair, and we heard from the district facilities director, Tim
Holly.
And he gave us an update on building status. Schools are ready to open, as superintendent said. Working on the town meeting approved capital items. Fans at both schools, Hanson and Middle School, Whitman Middle, playground equipment being installed, driveways being repaired, paved, high school, Hanson Middle. And Tim gave a great update on our SJ services and their cleaning of the buildings and their upkeep, and how he's going to follow up with them based on the contract we have and what they've been doing and where they may be falling short. So that was helpful. Anything else, Beth, you want to add?
Yeah, they want the change in name? The change in name.
Oh, yes. So superintendent and assistant superintendent made a recommendation to change the name of the subcommittee from facilities to operations and capital subcommittee, because we not only oversee facilities, but technology is a big part of that. So under operations, district-wide, facilities and technology falls under operations. So it'll be great to have, really a focus on technology.
Yeah, it's operations/capital or operations and capital subcommittee.
So we were just looking for this full committee to vote that as an official subcommittee.
Rather than facilities, the name is changed.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Okay. Can we get a motion for?
So second.
Well, hold on. Yeah. Motion. Can you give us? Can one of you give us the precise name we're changing it to? From facilities to what do you want to call it?
Operations and
Capital
capital.
subcommittee.
Operations and capital subcommittee. Okay, great.
That was
So
the motion.
somebody wants to make that motion?
So moved.
Second. All right, great. Any additional discussion on that? All those in favor? Okay, awesome.
And did you talk about the trucks?
I did not. Would you share?
Oh, sure. It had also recently came to my attention that the district was purchasing a couple of used trucks. We had discussion about that. One is a 2000, I think they're both 2016s. One is a Dodge Sprinter van, and the other one is a Toyota Tacoma. These are set up with contractor boxes, both inside on the van and on the outside in the pickup bed. I guess it's got one of the little shells that has all the drawers, etc. in it. The funding source, which I was very concerned about, came from the fact that within moving some personnel around, it was discovered we had a line painter that the district owned that was not operable. The person that was switching around in different responsibilities had experience and was able to repair it. So now the district had a line painter, and within the facilities budget, we did not have to hire an outside company to paint all our parking lot lines, etc., which we do on an annual basis. So that was able to save the approximately $40,000 that the 2 trucks cost. So now the idea is to be able to outfit the trucks with parts, keeping a nice inventory, which we have available through a software program that we already have with School Dude, I believe it is, so that when a technician goes out for a job and they're taking, say it's an HVAC vehicle, all their parts are right on the truck. They will be able to look up to see what parts are normally needed for that type of repair or service. They go to the job, they cost them out, it comes out of the inventory so that we know we have to reorder them, and it'll make us far more efficient and perhaps in the long run save some money as well. So, but if anybody gets the phone call like I did, what's the district doing buying used trucks? Now we have the answer.
And the lining he's talking about too is not the new driveway lining. That's separate because that was voted by the 2 towns. Okay, this is the regular, every day, every year parking lots of all the schools.
Good. Sounds like you had a productive meeting, so thank you.
I'm busy.
Real quick, this is what David was trying to catch me. So we will have a budget subcommittee meeting either immediately before or sometime before the next school committee meeting, so we'll make sure we meet on that before that. I won't get into what we're going to do, but we'll have a meeting, we'll post the agenda.
And then go into it after?
Yeah, yep. And that concludes our enrollment business. We do have an executive session, so the only vote we'll be taking when we come out of executive session will be to adjourn the meeting. So the executive session, I'd be looking for a motion to enter the executive session to discuss the deployment of security devices or strategy with respect thereof, as so the chair declares, which I guess I declare. Can I get a motion to
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. David?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll go into executive session.